At 5:12 a.m., while most of the city was still dreaming, the ground beneath San Francisco made a sound like a ripping canvas, a low growl that rose into a roar. And in less than a minute, the proudest city on the American West Coast was broken open like a dropped plate. What follows is not a legend, not an exaggeration polished by time, but a chain of events recorded by survivors, officials, soldiers, journalists, and even the President of the United States. A true story so shocking that for decades many Americans preferred not to look too closely at it. It is the story of how a city was destroyed not once, but 3 times in the same week, and how fear, courage, racism, heroism, and deception all shared the same burning streets. San Francisco in 1906 was the glittering promise of the American future. Less than 60 years earlier, it had been a muddy village. Now it was the financial capital of the West, home to opera houses, cable cars, and banks that funded empires. Its newspapers bragged that it was earthquake-proof. Its politicians dismissed scientists who warned about the nearby San Andreas Fault. Earthquakes, they said, happened in other places. When the shaking started, it felt as if the earth itself had betrayed that confidence. Buildings swayed violently, brick walls exploded outward, and streets buckled into waves. In some places, the ground dropped several feet. In others, it heaved upward. Gas mains snapped instantly. Water pipes shattered underground. People were thrown from beds, trapped beneath fallen beams, or crushed by collapsing staircases. The earthquake itself lasted less than a minute, but it killed thousands in that minute, though the exact number would later be deliberately obscured. Then the fires began. A single broken gas line, a single spark from a stove or a lamp was enough. Fire engines raced through the streets, only to find that their hoses spat dust. The city's water system was gone. Fire chiefs made desperate choices, trying to save landmarks and business districts while abandoning whole neighborhoods to flame. The wind picked up. Embers leapt from roof to roof. By noon, San Francisco was burning in multiple directions at once. In the chaos, the mayor issued an order that would haunt the city's conscience for generations. Soldiers and police were authorized to shoot looters on sight. The U.S. Army marched in from nearby forts, setting up patrols and checkpoints. Martial law was declared in practice, if not in name. Some of the men carrying rifles were heroes who pulled survivors from the rubble. Others used their authority to settle old scores or act on racial hatred. One of the most astonishing truths of the disaster is that much of San Francisco was not destroyed by the earthquake or even by the fires alone, but by dynamite. Desperate to create fire breaks, officials ordered entire blocks to be blown up. In theory, the explosions would stop the flames. In reality, untrained crews ignited new fires with almost every blast. Mansions, hotels, and humble homes alike were reduced to smoking craters by men who believed they were saving the city. For 3 days and nights, the firestorm advanced. People fled with whatever they could carry: pianos pushed on carts, bird cages clutched to chests, children wrapped in blankets. Refugee camps sprang up in parks and on beaches. In Golden Gate Park, tens of thousands slept under the open sky, watching the red glow of their city burn. Among those refugees were some who quickly realized that survival was not their only battle. Chinese immigrants, already targets of intense discrimination, were accused en masse of looting. Some were shot without evidence. Others were driven from camps or denied food. The disaster exposed a truth Americans rarely like to confront. Even in moments of shared tragedy, injustice does not pause. As the fires finally died down, a strange silence fell over the ruins. More than 80% of the city lay in ashes. Nearly every major building downtown was gone. Banks, newspapers, theaters, symbols of progress had vanished. And then, almost immediately, a second disaster began.
quieter but just as deliberate, the rewriting of history. City leaders, terrified that investors and residents would abandon San Francisco forever, launched a coordinated campaign to downplay the catastrophe. Newspapers were pressured to minimize death counts. Insurance companies seized on a convenient distinction. Earthquake damage was covered, fire damage often was not. Since fires caused most of the destruction, many companies refused to pay. Official statements emphasized the fires, not the quake, shifting blame away from nature and onto chance. The true death toll was buried. For years, the official number hovered around 500. Modern historians, studying records and mass graves, estimate that at least 3,000 people died, and possibly many more. The lie held because it served powerful interests. America wanted a story of resilience, not vulnerability. And yet, resilience there was, real, human, undeniable. Within days, survivors were clearing rubble with their bare hands. Makeshift schools opened in tents. Bakers worked night and day to feed the homeless. Women organized relief kitchens. Black, white, immigrant, and native-born citizens labored side by side, even as the old social barriers reasserted themselves in quieter ways. News of the disaster reached Washington quickly. President Theodore Roosevelt authorized federal aid on an unprecedented scale. The Army distributed food and supplies. Donations poured in from across the nation and around the world. For many Americans, the catastrophe marked the first time they saw their country act as a unified whole in response to a natural disaster. Rebuilding began almost immediately, and it was ruthless. Entire neighborhoods, especially those inhabited by the poor and by immigrants, were erased not by fire, but by planning committees. Chinatown was nearly relocated against the will of its residents. Only fierce resistance and diplomatic pressure from China itself prevented it. The city that rose from the ashes was more modern, more fire-resistant, and more segregated. Within a decade, visitors marveled at how quickly San Francisco had recovered. World's fairs celebrated its rebirth. Photographs of the ruins faded into archives. The official story hardened. A great fire bravely overcome. The earthquake became a footnote. The dead became statistics. The shootings became rumors. But the ground beneath San Francisco never forgot. Today, scientists know that the 1906 earthquake reshaped our understanding of seismic risk. It led to the development of modern earthquake science and building codes that have saved countless lives. The spar of the fault line runs quietly through California, a reminder written into the landscape itself. The most astonishing thing about this story is not that a city burned, but that it chose to lie about it and still managed to survive. San Francisco was destroyed by nature, by human error, and by fear, yet rebuilt by cooperation, labor, and hope. It is a true American story in the deepest sense, messy, painful, heroic, and unfinished. Because every time the ground trembles beneath the West Coast, the echoes of 1906 return, asking the same question they asked over a century ago. When the unthinkable happens, will we face the truth, or will we rewrite it to make ourselves safe? That question, more than the fire or the quake, is the legacy that still burns.